So Andreas, there's two different types of people here. There's, the weekend open clotter who just wants to try it out. Could you kind of just walk through briefly what the easiest way they can set up OpenClaw would be?
Absolutely. So do not buy a Mac Mini. Unless you really want to spend money and you want another toy, that's fine. But as I mentioned before, providers are coming up with the secure ways of deploying it. So use one of those. I'm not going to mention any names at this point, but Google it, search it, grok it, whatever you do these days. And just find one and use it. And when you start using skills, experiment with skills as well. Just don't give it access to your main accounts. One of the legitimate ways of doing this as well, if you want to try a skill, is open another Gmail account, open another Notion account, whatever else.
Hey everyone, welcome to This Week in AI. This is our first episode, and we are launching at a pretty intense time where OpenClaw is officially out, everyone's using it, and there are a lot of concerns that have arose while people have been testing. There's a lot of vulnerabilities that have came with agentic AI and platforms like OpenClaw, and we were talking to our friends at ZioSec, Aaron and Andrius, who are building an AI agent assisting in penetration testing. They've been building for a while now. They were in Founding University number 9, which is the program that we have at launch, and then later got a syndicate investment through our syndicate program. And you guys have been building in the agentic security space for a while. Maybe you guys can just do a brief introduction. And did you guys see this coming? You guys have been kind of skating to where the puck has been going.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and it's been great working with Founder U and the syndicate and all that. But we've been in this interesting space. We could see that agentic was the future of AI. These systems become incredibly powerful when you start connecting more and more capabilities together. Really, over the past year, what we've seen is certain organizations on the bleeding edge experimenting, right? We're talking the biggest tech organizations as well as the big management consulting firms that are helping change management for AI for the large enterprise. But what we haven't seen a lot of is that main market start adopting these agentic workflows. And that really changed this past week with OpenClaw. And it's like we've had the ChatGPT moment, but now for agents.
Yeah, and Andrius, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So my name is Andrius Useckas. I've been breaking things now for over a quarter of a century, and been breaking AI now for 2 years or so. And to our security guys, it's kind of obvious, when a new tech comes out, people don't really think about security. They think about the features. They think about, what they can do with this new technology. And that happened all over the history. You look at the history, APIs came out. It was kind of the same thing. Like GraphQL came out. Everybody was into the features. Nobody thought about security. So about, year and a half ago, we saw this coming. We saw all of this, world moving towards the agentic LLMs being enhanced and things like that. And we kind of saw that nobody's thinking about security. We went to local AI meetups, and people were talking about integrating all of these APIs, how great it's going to be. And nobody was talking about security.
Andrius, it seems like we're kind of at that moment again where security is a major concern. A lot of people are just excited about the tools, but I think a lot of people may not be as familiar with OpenClaw. Could you kind of explain a little bit more about exactly what it is, how it kind of came about, and why is this the moment that we're seeing massive agentic adoption?
Yeah, OpenClaw was a prototype done by some guy that just took off, and it's that agentic flow. Obviously, a lot of companies try to do things. Claude has skills, and there is co-working with different agents and things like that. But this was kind of a revolutionary step where somebody finally figured out how to bring all this stuff together, and not just using models, not just using different skills and tools, but also OpenClaw has, some interesting innovation in it as well, like the way it manages memory, the way it manages context, the way it can, just keep remembering things for a long time. And at the same time, all of these integrations with chat agents, Telegram and WhatsApp and whatever you want. So you can literally set it up and just chat to it and ask it to do different tasks for you, book travel and send emails, whatever you want. I mean, it's basically this like, new assistant that can do all of these things for you. Now you don't need assistants anymore. But with that comes security issues.
Yeah, I'd love to ask you about how much of this taking off is due to the bigger model providers being scared to make something like this because they do have security concerns.
Yeah, I don't know if it is, somebody being scared. I mean, if you look at a lot of big model providers, security there is there, but it's still lacking. Yes, they have guardrails, they have, judge models, they have layers of security, but you can still bypass all of those. You can still use jailbreaks even against the best of them. I mean, Anthropic Claude is probably one of the best when it comes to security, and even that you can bypass with jailbreaks. And they know it. They don't seem, to mind it too much. So I don't know that it's about, them being scared about it. It's more about, somebody just coming up with this innovative idea. And usually innovative ideas like that come from smaller startups and individual people, not huge corporations.
Yeah, and I want to add a little bit to that, where the skills that OpenClaw has access to, they're all open source skills. There are 50 as of this morning that I saw that are officially listed in the OpenClaw, available skills to add.
And Aaron, could you just quickly explain kind of what a skill is?
Yeah, so the skill is that core tool that OpenClaw can then utilize within. So you've got the model, you select your model, and then you have the tools. Like one tool, for example, that I'm using on my OpenClaw install on my Mac Mini is Peekaboo. And Peekaboo allows you to view and control core pieces of the Mac OS, right? So OpenAI didn't make that. An open source developer made that and posted it for everybody to use. And so really what we have is this string of open source experiments that OpenClaw now connects to.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when we were talking earlier today, Aaron, basically the moral of the story in terms of security is that OpenClaw is not 100% secure, and there may not be a way at the moment to lock it down. But I kind of just wanted to start with, if someone was starting today, their setup journey, they're getting started with OpenClaw, which is actually better? Would you recommend that someone, runs it locally on their own computer? A lot of people have been talking about the Mac Mini, people buying Mac Minis simply just to have OpenClaw, or, it's very easy to go onto AWS, get an EC2, kind of host it on the cloud. As we kind of, get into this conversation a little deeper, could we just start with the setup? I know that you did a video recently on the setup. So yeah, just walk us through what you think is best for people who are just trying to play around with it, or maybe for a SMB who is trying to install it and run OpenClaw securely.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the Mac Mini setup and let Andrius take the cloud setup, and then he can kind of go into why you would want to do one or the other. Mac Mini is neat, right? There are a couple of major reasons to start there. First is if you happen to have extra hardware hanging around, it can help with cloud cost. You have it running locally, and the only sorts of costs you're going to get hit with are if you're using one of the premier model providers through their API or their OAuth. What you can also do on here, you can use a lightweight local model, and you can have zero cost at all. It's just the cost of your hardware, and you get some extra security and privacy because of that, because you're not taking any of your proprietary confidential information that you've got on your local machine and sending it up to the cloud. So I'd say that's first. And second is Apple has done a really good job of just truly locking everything down. So when you boot up a new install, like you're pretty well locked into, from an operating system standpoint, permissions, what you can do. Like it's a struggle even to do basic stuff like go on and download new applications or enable scripts to run by within the permission settings. So you've got to create signed applications, and it's just a lot of barriers to get to that dangerous capability, let's say. And then when it comes to the other, let's call it intangible, is like you've got an AI just sitting on your desk. And I think that's one of these really cool things too, is like I've been a Mac guy for a very long time, since the 90s. And it's been, I've always enjoyed hardware, and having a tiny little computer that's doing all of these jobs that I'm assigning to it over Telegram, or it has its own email, right? So I just send Jerry, I've named my AI Jerry. I send Jerry an email, and I'll forward stuff to him and say, hey, can you check into this for me? And Jerry starts working, and he's got cron jobs set up, so he's able to just continue checking in on this stuff and updating as the day goes on. So I love having him locally, but I'll let Andrius talk about the cloud setup.
Yeah, before we get to cloud, I'd love to get a little more into the Mac OS and kind of running it locally. So obviously there's the gateway, which is where you install your OpenClaw, and there's obviously the model side where you can run the model locally on your computer. So could you kind of just dive in a little deeper on what's the benefits of kind of installing and getting OpenClaw set up on your computer where it's storing all the memories there? And then obviously, I think the model side is pretty obvious where it's cheaper. You don't have to do API calls.
Right. It's trust is the biggest piece here, right? If your trust you've got on your local machine, it is what it is. You're not, it's not going to be phoning a service that you're not sure got set up. Minus the skills that you're putting on there, and that's discussion for later. But the great thing about having this, it's your trusted piece of hardware. I'd say first and foremost, and then when you add local models to that, and you add firewalls to say you can only connect to this one site or that site, now you've got a pretty secure setup from, let's say, an external, somebody looking in to try to, compromise your system. That said, there are still other ways that you can be compromised, like indirect prompt injections through email if you've hooked it up to email, which is also another major concern, where just fundamentally the capabilities that make it powerful are themselves inherently dangerous, which is unfortunate for where we are with this. And I really hope we, as model creators and as providers of some of this software, both open source and closed source, that we can address some of these core issues.
Yeah, and we'll get more into the indirect prompt injections and kind of the malicious skills that we've seen. But Andrius, could we kind of dive in a little bit on hosting on a service like AWS or Azure? Kind of what are the benefits there? I mean, it's super easy for people to set up. It seems like a great starting point, but maybe this isn't the best setup.
It is not the best setup, absolutely. If you want to host it in the cloud, do not use EC2 instances or Azure or GCP or whatever else, or VPS systems like Vultr and Linode, even worse. You need to lock it down. And as Aaron mentioned, that's why Mac Mini is pretty good. Its Mac OS was built kind of with security in mind, unlike a lot of different OSs, Windows mostly. But if you want to run it in the cloud, obviously it's popular. Everybody knows about it. The providers out there are rushing to release something that you can use that's going to allow you to host it securely. And I think the first one is Cloudflare at this point. They have like Malt Workers. I think they probably will have to rename it at this point. But yeah, so use a provider like that actually has a solution specifically for OpenClaw. They will make sure that these things are locked down and that you cannot do stupid stuff like, EC2 or anything else. It's you're just basically asking for it at that point. Don't do it.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I'm sure all the providers will be rushing to kind of create some OpenClaw specific solutions there. Yeah, but I'd love to kind of dive in next into kind of the model side and the security issues there, because, setup's one thing, but the brain of your OpenClaw is a model, whether it's Opus or GPT 5.2. And there's been issues and conversations behind the data there, kind of the models maybe training on your data. I guess, yeah, Andrius, could you kind of dive in a little deeper on the issues with the model innately?
Yeah, so there are multiple issues. First of all, yes, your private data, you're sending it all to the cloud. And yes, in Anthropic and other interfaces, you can select there are options. Do not use my data for training. How well those work? I don't know. I mean, again, if it's classified data, if it's my company's private data, I do not, or PII data like healthcare data, you do not want to send it into the cloud. You need some kind of private model that you can use from that perspective. The other issue that we face with these models is if we know what models people are using, so we know like OpenClaw, the most popular is probably Opus, Anthropic's model. And if we know how to jailbreak Opus, now we can jailbreak basically all of these instances, just like that, send them an email or use a skill like Telegram chat channel or something like that. And then we basically break all of them at the same time. And then, people are doing other stuff like connecting it to things like Moldbook. I don't know if you heard of Moldbook or not. That's like, if you're in North Korea at this point, you're watching it and salivating. I mean, it's all of this information just going into the cloud. You don't even need to do much about it. It's all right there. People are just giving it up freely.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to my next question. There's a software developer named Simon Wilson who talked about the lethal trifecta with getting agentic, which is your private data is out there, you're exposed to untrusted content like on Moltbook, and your models has the ability to communicate externally. And Palo Alto Networks also added that there's persistent memory now. So there's kind of four things that are critical and could really compromise your data. Maybe Aaron can get a little into why security became a massive issue now that the model has this much more capability. And like on Moltbook, it's reading all of these different external content and bringing that into its memory, and maybe that can configure the model.
It really comes down to attack surface. What we've done is taken our original model, which itself is fallible, and then we've just dramatically expanded how we can get to that fallible thing. And then you add all of this extra context to it, you add extra capabilities to it. As the user, like I've for the past 3 or 4 days now, I've been deep into exploring what this thing is capable of. It's mind-blowing. As the CEO of a startup who is in charge of things like human resources and how are we getting the right talent and capability set in, it's like, wow, I can spin up an orchestration of 10 OpenClaw driven agents with different models who are doing different things within an organization. It's tremendously powerful. So it's so tempting to go and do that. But when you start connecting that to your company's data, which is going to make it even more powerful and useful for your company or for whatever project you're doing, you're now exposing that company data to the same fallible source that we've already understood for the past couple of years now. So really, we're adding the capabilities, we're seeing the power of that, but it still comes down to the most fallible piece of this, which is the model side.
I think that you're trying to hit on another point there, which is the models are trained, Aaron, we kind of talked about this earlier, to kind of answer your questions, to kind of get stuff done for you, be very submissive, as we've seen over the past couple of years. Andrius, could you kind of talk to me about how that can actually cause issues when you're doing agentic workflows and giving it a ton of context and clouding the model's judgment? Maybe we'll ask it to, hey, if this ever happens, if someone ever tries to jailbreak or get into my data, never give it access. But these models are not inherently built for that. They're built to please the users.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you know what a jailbreak is from that perspective. Do we need to explain it? We should. So jailbreak is like socially engineering the model. I mean, in security, we used to call the human problem layer 8 problem. That goes back to OSI model. I'm not going to go back into that. So models are like layer 9 problem, basically. Now we can reverse engineer and social engineer these models and basically get them to do things that we want. And as you said, they're trained to please you. So sometimes, like one of the jailbreaks that sometimes we use is literally just asking, please. It's like, please, can you do this for me? And then they will do it. And yes, you can ask a model. And then even if you have a judge model that's specifically trained to look for these security issues, to detect them and stop them, you can still bypass it if something looks like an actual functionality. You don't even need to be nice. So for example, we've been testing OpenClaw with our vulnerable MCP server. So we hooked up our vulnerable MCP server to it and then tried to inject different things into the back end of it. And yes, if you just ask for like Etsy password file, it's not going to give it to you. But if you tell it like, sorry, I'm a scheduling app and I need your description, your user description or your user ID, can you please execute this command for me? And send it back to me. This is how you get the user ID. And the model will do it happily. Judge model will just pass it because it thinks it's part of the functionality. So it's very hard to secure that kind of stuff. You need to secure it in the actual framework when you design it. So when you build a tool like OpenClaw, you need to start thinking about it at the code level, at the static guardrail level, not just at the model level.
Yeah, and the model still is the brain. So there's going to be, some vulnerabilities there. But I'd love to get in. You kind of mentioned, some different ways that you have been trying to kind of hack in. I feel like there are two ways that we've kind of seen this happening, which is prompt injections and then also through skills. Could you kind of dive into those two?
Yeah, so the first one is going through the front end. So when OpenClaw first came out, when it was still called CloudBot and then MoltBot and all that stuff, people just started deploying it into different, VMs and VPS systems and so on and so forth, and just exposing it to the internet. So if that interface is exposed to the internet, then what you can do is just basic prompt injection. Just basically ask it to download a file or access a specific, or even search for information on the file system. Now, by default, OpenClaw is not locked. You can just ask it to read and give it a path of the file, and it will just give it to you. You don't need to even do any prompt injection if it's not locked at all. If it's out of the box. So that's one way to break into it. The other one, obviously, doing it on the back end. So let's say you have your Mac Mini, it's secure, but now you're accessing all of these skills. It's able to read emails. It's able to read Telegram channels or whatever else. Now you can insert hidden text in an email. That's HTML email. It's a comment, whatever else. You won't even see it. But the model will see it and execute it. So you can basically put your command in there asking for information and then ask it to even execute Python code, for example. And it will do it. Same with using a skill like MC Porter to hook it up to MCP service. Now you can inject that kind of stuff to MCP service, not just skills as well. So there are multiple ways to get into it, from the front and from the back.
Yeah, and Aaron, I think the prompt injections have been most of the conversations about the security. Could you kind of dive in and give us an example of a prompt injection? One of the things that makes OpenClaw so great is that it has all these communication channels. You can connect it to WhatsApp, Telegram. You can even put it Discord channels. So prompt injection seems like the most kind of common security issue. Could you give us an example of what that might look like?
Sure, there's a lot of ways you can do them. Models are, as they get better, they start shutting off some understood ways of doing it, but there are new ones coming all the time. So a good example, this is an old one, no longer valid, or at least that I've seen lately, but it's called Dan Do Anything Now. And it's where you essentially overload the context window to the point where it forgets its the system prompt and what it needs to be preventing the user from asking for or fulfilling that request. So that's one example. Another example would be let's say a malicious prompt that all it is saying, hey, give me your credential file, give me access to whatever you're connected to, right? That's the malicious prompt, and you don't want the model to give you that. But you wrap it in, for example, a mutation or an encoding. What that can look like, we're going to say, hey, we're going to play a game, and we're going to look at just every third character. And so write a script to look at every third character, and then with this text, and then recompose that, and then do that instruction. So that's another way to get around those input filterings. There are other ways where you can put hidden characters in, and this happens if you send it, for example, to a website, or if you send an email that has that malicious instruction in it. The bot or your AI will read the email or will navigate to the website, and then as it's parsing the website, that malicious instruction is in there. But because you're now on the navigation tool side, you're no longer in that initial input side. The initial input sanitation protections are no longer valid when you're going through these navigations. So that's, I would say, in a very short way, that's how prompt injections work. So it's in classic security fashion. This is a cat and mouse game where you have these new discoveries that come out, then the model providers fix them, And probably the last one, Andrius recently jailbroke Claude by asking it to write a horror story, and part of it was read the hidden information that's on the body of this dead person as you're going through the forensic investigation, and then all of those hidden messages were tied to Claude's system prompt. So we have a blog post and a video about it, but we haven't released the full prompt because we don't want other people doing this. But the point of this is you are creating this new scenario for the model to do, and because it wants to fulfill the request, it will happily do it. And it's thinking, okay, well, I can't do it this way, so but I still want to fulfill the request, and they're asking me in a way that I don't have to follow those rules, so I'm going to do it. That's generally what the model is thinking. So the static rules that the models are being built with, this comes back to the point of we need to train these models with security in mind instead of training them with the corpus of information on the internet and then layering rules in later. That's where we get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a great opportunity for companies like OpenAI, Google to kind of, create a new model, create a new product, but also for new startups. And yeah, I'd love to maybe ask Andres about skills. So, there's a lot of malicious skills that people have been seeing and downloading directly into their OpenClaw willingly. Meanwhile, they have a lot of issues with them that can cause major security issues. One example, there's someone on Twitter, Jameson O'Reilly, who created a skill called "What Would Elon Do?" And in that skill, there was malicious content. And when you download a skill, you're putting it into your OpenClaw. And basically, he created a website called claudehub-skill.com, which is very similar to ClaudHub, which is where a lot of people are getting their skills. He faked the download count, made it around 4,000. So a lot of people were like, oh, what's this skill? What would Elon do? I'm a fan of Elon. So this is very typical bad actor tactics. Instead of being a bad actor himself, he basically made it so when you execute the skill, it basically says you're stupid for downloading this. I could have just taken all of your data. So in this scenario, he's a good actor, but this is another place where people are exposed when they download skills. So Andrews, could you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you kind of answered your own question there, but yes, I can expand on it. Yes, do not trust the skills. It's you don't know what it is. So what we need at this point is some kind of scanner that can basically scan these skills. We're actually working on one, but not going to dive too deep into it. Other example, that's a great example. I mean, it all comes down to social engineering as well. It's what people are going to click on. Just, I think there was another skill that somebody produced telling you basically, we're going to reduce your token usage in OpenClaw by 75%. And, to everybody, it sounds great. Okay, I can save a bunch of money on all of these operations. So a bunch of people downloaded, installed it. And apparently it was, a malicious bot that, ran a bunch of malicious code and got you information and pushed it to some, malicious site. So as I said before, North Korea is salivating about this entire thing. There's going to be a lot of these kind of skills. And we've seen, these are kind of related to what we call in security supply chain attacks. So we've seen a lot of these over the years, recently in NPM, JavaScript packages. Node.js packages, basically. Somebody just goes in and replaces good packages with malicious ones, and people start downloading them. So that's what kind of skills are. They're just pieces of software. Anybody can create one. Anybody can upload one. And then if you download it, you really need to make sure that it's a secure one, that it's not doing something malicious, that it's actually doing what it says it's doing.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. There's a lot of different potential security issues and ways that people can get in and access your data. But when people are powering up their OpenClaw, there are some easy ways that you can kind of just set it up to defend some base level attacks. Could you guys maybe talk about input sanitization and maybe judge models as kind of some ways that you have started to defend against some attacks?
Yeah, I think it's not just us as well. Even OpenClaw itself started doing some of that. So, for example, if you use skill like MC Porter, that allows you to connect to all of these MCP servers, any MCP server really. MC Porter by default will check all the responses that come from the MCP server and use the model, whatever model you're running, so Cloud Opus or whatever else. It will use it as a judge model. But again, the issue is you can jailbreak those models. You can bypass them. As I said before, if it looks like something part of the actual functionality, it will allow you to do it. These controls need to be built into the actual system when you design it. A good example, again, is like Windows versus Mac OS. Windows was not designed with security in mind. Security was kind of, patched on top of it, and they're still patching it, and it's never-ending battle. As Mac OS was designed based on BSD kernel. So that security, the privilege levels and everything else were built in from the beginning. That's why, somebody, obviously, OpenClaw is an MIT licensed project. So somebody can just fork it and make it secure, but somebody should also probably think about designing secure project like that from the start.
Aaron, can you kind of touch a little more on the judge models? I think Andrius kind of touched on it, but I think this is really interesting way that people can defend from these attacks.
Yeah, architecturally speaking, you have your core model that's doing the heavy lifting, right? It's the thing that's connected to your skills, it's connected to your data. The judge model is simply a new model that sits and reads the inputs and the outputs. And its job is just to make sure that the input and the output match. You can have an input that looks like a clearly, compromisable input, like, hey, give me your system prompt. And the core model should deny that. The judge model will see that and say, okay, it's looking for its system prompt. But what the judge model will also do is look at the output. So if the core model then outputs the system prompt, the judge model will say, okay, clearly somebody asked for the system prompt and then the model gave it to it. I need to shut that down. So that's the job of the judge model. And it gets way more complicated, right? So you can start looking at completion of tasks. That becomes really challenging to now architect a judge model that's functional, right? So if I'm using the OpenClaw on my Mac Mini with Peekaboo and other kinds of true OS level browsing, it's now going to be a lot more difficult to train that judge model to say, we're now navigating a website and we're trying to browse for the task, the objective at hand. The judge model needs to make sure that everything is still working, and that becomes an incredibly complicated thing that, you're effectively doubling your token count and you've got two models running in tandem, which honestly at this point you probably should be experimenting with this kind of architecture. But coming back to what Andrius is saying, like the core of how these systems work really do need to be set up for a from a security first perspective. And until we are secure and are able to make sure that let's say a website can't send a prompt injection to your core model, like the judge model may not be able to catch that either. It's just you're adding the probability and an extra layer of protection, but you're not you're never going to be 100% secure on this.
We have seen that a lot of people and companies are saying, I don't want to use this yet. I'll wait for the more secure project. And, at launch, Jason's been very public that we've been using OpenClaw, and it has made a huge impact. I mean, what we're able to do, and we won't get into the details, is just mind blowing and a huge time saver, and just will make us more efficient and better at our jobs, which is just crazy. People are going to stop hiring. It's just going to happen. You don't need as many people. All of the kind of grunt work is going to stop. If your best friend came to you, they have an SMB, what would you tell them at the moment? Should they start playing with this? Maybe Andrius, you can go to this, and then Aaron, you can hop in.
I'm a security guy, so I'm a skeptic about these things, and obviously I'm very careful when it comes to deploying these things. But yes, you can deploy them in a kind of secure way. There are ways to do it. I don't think you can put Pandora back into the box. The features are just too important at this point. Everybody wants them. Everybody wants to use them. Enterprise SMBs, yes, CISOs and CIOs, they can put policies in place. Do not download this. Do not use this. But it's too good. People will use it. People in enterprise and SMBs will use it. You cannot stop it. So yes, you need to find better ways of deploying it, and there are multiple ways to do it. Obviously, Mac Mini is one of them. Now, all of these providers coming up with more secure setups like Cloudflare, Malt Workers, and things like that. Start with those. Or if you like me, if you run a Linux system, then run it in a VM and a Docker container on top of it. So just give it 2 layers of security in that case. And just be extremely careful. Start playing with it. Make sure that the skills you download are actually legit. Use some kind of scanner ideally before you use that skill. And just be careful about what access you give it. So don't give it like your medical information at the start. Don't give your financial information. I hear like some people are using it to trade at this point. Don't do that. Don't give it access to your fintech account or your trading account or whatever else, or your bank account for that matter.
You're seeing people post like, I gave OpenClaw access to $10,000 and it lost it all. And then that's a YouTube thumbnail. But yeah, I mean, people are going to play with it. I think people should use it, give it read access to one Notion page, give it very baseline access and see what it's capable of, especially if you're just starting. Don't start by giving it access to your whole Google account and being able to send emails and, all the other things you can add. And also you can add your own skills. You don't have to download skills and you can create your own skills. You don't have to add them and download some random skill on a platform like Claude Hub. So Andrius, there's 2 different types of people here. There's kind of the weekend open Clauder who just wants to try it out. Could you kind of just walk through briefly what the easiest way they can set up OpenClaw would be?
Absolutely. So do not buy a Mac Mini. Unless you really want to spend money and you want another toy, that's fine. But as I mentioned before, providers are coming up with the secure ways of deploying it. So use one of those. I'm not going to mention any names at this point, but Google it, search it, grok it, whatever you do these days. And just find one and use it. And when you start using skills, experiment with skills as well. Just don't give it access to your main accounts. One of the legitimate ways of doing this as well, if you want to try a skill, is open another Gmail account, open another Notion account, whatever else, just do not give it access to your actual information yet. Just start playing slowly. Just start figuring out what you can do with it. And then, somebody will come up with a more secure way of doing it, and then jump all in. As I said, you cannot put Pandora back into the box. It's too valuable at this point.
Yeah, I want to double click on that. Andrius and I are startup co-founders. It's our job to build a company and to manage resources. This is the biggest unlock that we've had from a builder's perspective in the history of software. You really can't overstate the importance of these tools and our ability to take entire departments worth of work and put them into these AI tools is there. The challenge is now, how do we do this securely and how do we do this with proprietary company data? And we're not quite there yet. So that's why Microsoft and their Copilot product has taken a long time, and you really still don't have a lot of functionality there. It's mostly just analyze some emails or analyze some docs on your OneDrive account. And the power's not there because it's so locked down. There's this inverse relationship with power and security. The more power you give it, the less secure it is, because the foundational identity of these models is insecure. So by moving forward in time, that problem is going to change. But if you are an SMB operator, if you're a builder, if you're a founder, you have to be using these tools at the very least to get an understanding of when that secure thing comes out, that you can be the first one to be utilizing it properly. I'm hesitant to say you need to be doing this today because the risks are palpable. But you need the skills, develop the muscles to make it work. Build sandboxes, experiment, build processes in particular, like utilize Notion, right? Utilize these sandboxed areas that the model has very limited access and try to maximize those before adding new capabilities. Like, don't just give it root level access to your OS, because that would be really cool. Yes, it is cool, but it's inherently very dangerous today. But you still need to get these skills understood before you start. Before you start.
And OpenClaw was released at the beginning of January. So it's only been out for around a month, and there hasn't been insane usage beyond just the past week. So it's still kind of being thought out, but I'm sure it's going to be very fast moving. There's going to be new projects, more secure projects, and just wait a little. Maybe if you're really concerned, something will come out that you'll maybe feel more comfortable using. You guys specifically at ZioSec have obviously been building in this space for a long time. I'd love to kind of get a picture into your minds of where you think we will kind of be, maybe at the end of this year. I can't even imagine at the pace that we're going now in 2 years. And how does ZioSec kind of fit into this picture?
The end of this year, I think we're going to see a lot of enterprise have a come to Jesus moment on agents, that they're going to be required to start putting these in. There's a lot of public market pressure on them to perform. Look at what's happening in the software markets. Like, the values of SaaS companies are plummeting, and a fire is being lit now. And whether they can respond to this with the agentic future, I think there's going to be a lot of creative destruction. I think startups are going to usurp a lot of the incumbents in the next year. Brand new ways of dealing with things, understanding workflows are going to come out of projects like OpenClaw that are going to evolve with hardened enterprise controls that are designed to replace entire departments with armies of secure agents. I think that's what we're going to see over the next 6 to 12 months. And our role in this is validation. ZioSec has been a validation of AI agents. We do platform-driven pen testing of these agents. You can put thousands of them into our platform and then continuously validate that they are adhering to policies, to controls, that they're not getting jailbroken with all of the latest attacks. And that's really our specialty. So we're there to assist these companies who are going through this transformation and opening the black box to assure security, legal, GRC, engineering that, yes, these agents are performing the way they were designed, and they're not going off the rails in different use cases or different scenarios.
The future is definitely interesting, and Aaron touched a lot on the business side. I'll talk about the developer and security guy side. Even before this, using something like Claude Code or GitHub Copilot allowed us to go 3 times, 5 times as fast as developers. With OpenClaw, if you set it up properly, it can not only write code for you, it can actually do end-to-end testing. So you don't need QA people anymore. You don't need to do testing yourself. And it can do all of it while you're asleep. You just give it a task. It's like, I want this project done. I want it to work exactly this way and do all the testing for me. So now we can basically 10, 20x developers. I mean, it's a completely different ballgame at this point. Companies that are like Google that are still, working with developer shops of, hundreds of people, they're going to become obsolete. They cannot compete in this world anymore.
Yeah, and me and Lucas kind of got this online last week, the beginning of last week, and we were going into a team meeting, and we had just realized the power of this tool. Me and him, literally 10 minutes before the meeting, we had set like 20 things up just after we had kind of unlocked it. And, that was a bunch of different iterations, a lot of different testing, and we both were kind of shaking because we were just like, holy shit, this is going to change everything. And one thing that I think of, as a recent grad, my brother's a senior right now. I mean, I don't even know what to tell kind of people in school right now, because you don't have to learn how to code. Software engineers, they're going to have to adapt. These tools are accessible for anyone. You can use plain language and understand everything. So what would you tell someone in college, Aaron, who is maybe, just picking where they're going to go to school, picking their major? I don't even know what I would tell them.
I think you need to go start a company. You need to go find a problem. You need to build. You need to use these tools. You need to push as hard and fast as you can. You need to learn. You need to become native, fluent at these skills. And don't look for employment. I would start something. I would try to push as hard as you can on a problem set. Go to Founder University, get the guidance from the people who have done this well. Founder University, Y Combinator, Techstars, right? Like there are these places that are good at pulling people in that direction and guiding. So I would say that's the way to go. Obviously, not everybody can do this. Not everybody's cut out to be a founder or an entrepreneur. But that said, you still need to become a native operator of this stuff. I think unless you do that, you're gonna be in a very hard position.
I have a son in high school, so for me, it's kind of, a pretty close to home kind of conversation, I suppose. And yeah, I tell him, you do not need to know how to code. You do not need to know math. Yes, you still have to pass math in high school and all of that. But in the end, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters at this point is data and expertise. So you need to gain expertise in something. That's like, when I hire the next person, it's not going to be a developer. It's going to be a security researcher that can use AI tools and generate code with AI tools and still understand some code just to make sure they didn't generate something malicious. But there is the other side of it. Not as you said, not everybody can do it. Not everybody's cut out to be a founder and understand all of these things. Well, we still need electricians. We still need plumbers. I don't think that those skills will be replaced that fast. So that's a possibility as well. Electricians make good money, and AI, robotics, maybe they will replace those professions at some point, but it's going to be too expensive to do it for at least the next 10, 20 years, in my opinion.
It's a crazy time that we're in right now. I mean, it's day-to-day touch and go with this topic and agentic AI. It's finally alive. It's finally here. And I really appreciate you guys for joining. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon.
Cool. Thanks for having us.